Yep.
Now, Trump's assurance saying we will not roll out CBDC
Yep.
helps in that fight
hugely.
for freedom.
All right, next subject, mate. Where are we going to go?
Look, some interesting stuff has come out in the last few days with Donald Trump endorsing cryptocurrency.
And I will also stop Joe Biden's crusade to crush crypto. We're going to stop it. I will ensure that the future of crypto and the future of Bitcoin will be made in the USA, not driven overseas. I will support the right to self-custody to the nation's 50 million crypto holders. I say this with your vote. I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. And I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency.
Now, that's huge.
That is absolutely huge.
That's a huge statement, because we have needed a kind of an idea. There's been legal battle going on with the SEC, which is like America's version of ASIC,
Yes.
and a number of cryptocurrencies, mainly Ripple. They've also, I think, are turning to another cryptocurrency exchange,
Okay.
and they've kind of teamed up and are looking at how this plays out. This has been in the back of mind of a lot of investors. How will this be accepted in the mainstream cryptocurrency? And this is getting a lot of clarity. If this guy gets in November, with a very high probability that he probably will, it'll be interesting how this president is going, I don't want to shut this down. I want to take it on board and make America number one in this industry, be a leader in the field. Now, this is an interesting play in the playbook when there's been a lot of the BRICS wanting to demise the whole US dollar and in that old money system. And Trump is kind of going, forewarning, hey, there's a new system here. We need to go to it. But your concerns about a CBDC are over. And we'll get into CBDC in just a moment, so hold that thought. Okay. He's even taken a step further. If you go to donaldtrump.com, they are now accepting crypto as part of their fundraising for the election campaigns, and doing that in numerous cryptocurrencies. So this is a whole different level of politics saying, hey, we're embracing this rather than fighting this industry. And that's been a big thing, because what is money based on? Is based on means of exchange that we agree that this is valued at XYZ.
Spot on. Look, to me, also, this is acknowledgement that, again, we go back to draining the swamp. The fact that this has exposed the fiat currency system, exposed the weaponization of the US dollar. People now know. People didn't know before. People didn't know how much the US dollar, how its power changed after World War II. People just don't know. People don't know they pulled the gold standard off it back in the early 70s. People just don't know. I mean, I only found out a few years ago myself. I made the assumption. I don't know. That's how it is. Now, with crypto, the old toothpaste is out of the tube, right? It is a functioning. Look, when you've got companies like, and I feel sick saying it, but when companies like BlackRock are buying it, it's here. It's absolutely here. And to me, it's the greatest way of displaying a freedom from that old system, that controlling system. You've now got control of your money. You don't have to rely on the banks there, to be the custodians of your wealth.
Well, the old system has to scramble to catch up with the technology, because this is why you're seeing ETFs, exchange traded funds, being rolled out. So basically what an exchange traded fund is if you want to get exposure to a certain asset class, you can simply buy a few shares in that fund, as opposed to having to try to fork out enough to buy an entire coin or something like that. In some ways it's simpler, because you don't have to have your own crypto wallet. There is a bit of a science behind getting involved with crypto exchanges. There's a few more hoops to jump through, and it's less regulated than what you find in the old finance industry. But for hedge funds to get exposure to it and big money, they've needed those regulatory requirements. It's fine for mum and dad to get involved with it, but the big players have got to be able to move millions into it.
Well, to me also, look, Trump endorsing this, and I think that, look, if Trump doesn't come into power in November, I will be absolutely blown away. I mean, it would just be the most creative accounting you've ever seen when it comes to counting those votes. But if he does, having that crypto as accepted is, I can see now my thought of, we've talked about how easy it would be to use crypto if there was literally a card or on your phone, whatever, when you could just pay pass. When it gets to that point, right, I think that it's going to absolutely explode. Now, if you've got the president of the United States, okay, the guy effectively in charge of the US dollar, so to speak, if he's saying, if he's opening the door to that technology, I think that ease of use will be opened in a hurry.
It's information that investors look at very seriously and go, right, do I want to make a play and have exposure to that kind of asset area?
Sure.
And so this is why I'm making a big deal about it, because this has been the big unknown as far as money treatment and how government would treat it. We've seen China ban it numerous times to their citizens. And there's always been the unknown of, will government accept this or ban it? This is, and the fact that there have been cases that have won against the SEC in court also kind of makes the area more legitimate in the eyes of investors, as well as going, okay, that's another hurdle. Sure. They've won these legal battles and now being recognized and accepted this way. So this is really, really interesting space to watch.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is probably a really good time to actually mention, what you do as far as at Blu Sky Factory. You are educating people on these subjects in a way that you can relate to in your everyday life, something that's actually tangible. You can actually make the most of it. And I really appreciate what you do, mate. It's very, very important, because without, look, let's be frank. If you don't have the information, if you don't have the education, okay, you're walking along in the dark here. You really are. Whereas I know with myself, as I say, there was a lot of things I wasn't aware of. I've been very, very lucky that I've done a Blu Sky Factory course and eye-opening. Unfortunately, I can never go back. You've opened my eyes and I can never go back, but I think that's really important. So anybody who would like to sort of get more information, look, jump on the website and get in touch for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. BlueSkyFactory.com.au, Blue Sky without an E. I'd like to also just get back to this point of CBDCs and what the big concern was, because this is related to people's personal freedoms.
Yep.
And Representative Marjorie Greene from Georgia has summed up what the potential of CBDCs could do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act. This would prohibit unelected bureaucrats at the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency that would destroy Americans' right to financial privacy. CBDCs are a digital form of a sovereign currency designed and issued by the federal government and recorded on a ledger controlled by the federal government. In other words, if a political enemy of the deep state, or say a Democrat regime, says or does something that is not approved, the government could prohibit them from using their digital government-controlled financial assets, or simply take them away. We're talking about Americans' money. Never forget, in the past few years, we just lived through a time, and Americans are very aware of it, where the government forced social media to censor Americans for their statements about the 2020 election and unconstitutional COVID lockdowns and violations of Americans' medical freedom, forcing them to take an experimental vaccine in order to work, go to school, shop, go to restaurants, and live. Government tracking Americans on keywords like MAGA, Trump, or Americans that care about their Second Amendment rights has also been something that has happened in the past few years and is still happening. The very idea of our government controlling our money with the ability to turn it off whenever they see fit is terrifying. I support this bill and urge my colleagues to support it.
Now, Trump's assurance saying we will not roll out a CBDC helps in that fight hugely for freedom. Or additionally, you've also had a number of states passing legislation. We will not allow CBDCs in our state, within the United States. So you've got to understand that state law is very powerful in the United States.
Totally different to what we live with in Australia.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this has been, as I've always said, America is the key here in terms of the freedoms of Australia.
Sure.
Because Australia wants to do international trade with Australia and America, as well as we've always relied on them as an ally as far as our military defense is concerned as well.
Totally agree.
I see that Australia wants to keep that relationship going. It's flirted with the idea of having other relationships with other nations that America isn't so friendly with for economic reasons. But I think there's a defining point here when you've got this going on, that this the giants in the United States have had to come down in relation to the push to take their freedoms away. That war seems to be winning. It can't stop, though. It has to keep pushing through for people's freedoms. And this is a very positive information coming out that the beast system, as they want to roll out, or has been suggested by certain groups, is now losing ground, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and I want to bring up the example of, we're talking obviously about the US so much, and obviously and how it relates to us in Australia, but let's just, this is not pie in the sky stuff. Let's think about what happened not that long ago in Canada, right, with the truckers having their bank accounts frozen because basically they disagreed with what the government were doing. This is very real. Now, in a place like Canada, where we always thought they were very reasonable, and I think most Canadians are reasonable, it's just when you've got socialists running the place who are, you know, I don't know, the sons of dictators, it's really shown in such a graphic way. Before, you could kind of go, oh, look, yeah, but that social credit system, it's just a Chinese thing, or, you know, it's just, oh, it's over there. It's nowhere near us, right?
Well, why did we have a pregnant woman in Victoria arrested during lockdowns for putting a post on Facebook in her pajamas that went viral, right? Simply because she said, hey, here's an idea. Why don't we protest against these lockdowns?
That's right.
And the police rolled up and did that. So if you think that that's just something far away overseas, it affects us.
It does. And there's many things I could talk about, and probably we would go on for hours, but that I've been involved with, that, you know, if we're going to talk about, you could talk about Monica Smith, you could talk about all sorts of people who are Australians who have been, and obviously the most, you know, the famous one is Julian Assange. Yeah, Australians who have stood up. You could even talk about particular politicians who have been thrown in jail as political prisoners for speaking up against the system. No. This is very real. And, you know, you have to treat it with the serious, well, you know, you have to know about the connotations. You have to know. Whenever I look at anything, I think about, okay, whatever it is, policy, this, that, whatever. You kind of go, okay, how will it be exploited? Because no matter what, human nature is to exploit things. So you can't just look and go, oh, that's going to benefit XYZ people. Yeah, it might. But let's look longer. Let's see what giving that freedom or taking that freedom away, what's the long distance damage that will do, because as human beings, we will always try to take advantage.
Fighting for freedom comes at a price.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people have paid a higher price than others. I know, Aaron, you have paid a price for doing what you do here at Edge Radio. I acknowledge that. There's been costs to me as well. And for freedom is not cheap, and freedom is not for free, but we have to do it for our kids. And it's what is exciting about this is showing that if enough people speak up and demand this from the public servants, from the politicians, if they will do it collectively. And I think what I really want to say here, it's important we stop fighting internally, because that's the whole aim is to cause dissension over different issues and distraction, and go, let's get them fighting over here to ignore what's going over there, right? So let's put in lots of attention on this news story. You know, we're going to crack down on, you know, possession of knives and all this sort of stuff. Meanwhile, we're going to pass legislation on digital IDs, right?
That's right.
Let's keep that on the quiet.
They just keep moving the shells, right?
And it's like, look over here. Let's get this legislation going underneath the door here. And it's time for people to wake up and demand more from the politicians they elect. And they've got to feel the heat. They really do.
Look, I think next year it is over 80% of the world is having elections, you know, and please take this opportunity, because it is an opportunity. Do your research on your politicians, see what they stand for. Don't just go, oh, I vote for them because mum and dad did or whatever. Let's look at them and what the individual stands for.
Ring them up and ask them.
Yeah.
What is your stance on XYZ?
Yep.
You know, the issues that are important to you, ask them. Because then they've got to draw the line in the sand and not just be wishy-washy, but actually say what they feel.
Oh, look, I remember the first time I met Roger Cook, who's our current Premier here in WA, okay, back in 2009. I spoke directly to him. I've never come across a man that I found so weak. He was just a weak man. I thought, my word, like you just... everything you were doing was handball. Oh, look, I'd love to help, but I'd love to do this, but I have to handball, right? And I think to myself, I put that in the memory back there in 2009. I will never vote for this man.
My dad was interesting. He was a pastor, and he'd ring him up and say, "Listen, what do you believe in God?" That was one of his big ones, right?
I like that.
Do you believe in God?
Yep.
And there's no fluffing on that one. You can tell pretty quick where they stood on that issue. And to him, that was important, because if they didn't believe in God, then their whole different worldview is going to influence the decisions they make in Parliament.
Very, very true. So what, do you just keep ringing until you find someone who follows your religion?
Well, I think Dad wanted to basically find out, to them, it wasn't as extreme as it is now. I think there was more belief back then that, there was a God, or is a God, or whether you follow him or not, but there is an existence of God. There's varying relationship answers there. But you could tell very quickly where somebody stood on that one.
I think now, no matter how you look at it, there's an awful lot of false gods out there. Really is.
And there's a lot of self-gods as well.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah,
a lot of idolatry.
Good.